Good afternoon, good morning, welcome to the 2019 Virtual Open Day for the MSc in Law and Finance, or the MLF. I'm John Armour, I'm the Academic Director of the programme. I've been involved in the programme for 10 years now, and we're delighted to welcome you to this afternoon's session, which we hope will give you the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the programme and to ask some questions of me and current students in the programme. And I'm joined today by two of our current students sat here on my right, Natalia Fazano-Nevais and Youssef Romani. And in a few moments they're going to say a little bit about their experiences and what they've got out of the programme. So to begin with, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of the MLF programme. What I hope you can see in the slide now is a graphic representation of how it's put together. So, as you're probably aware, the programme takes people who have a prior law background and gives them an introduction to finance and economics. So the beginning of the course is quite heavy on the finance and economics side. So in the first term, there are 3 terms over the course of the year. In the first term, you will be doing the course on First Principles of Financial Economics, or FPFE. You will also be doing or starting a course in finance. So both of those courses are delivered by colleagues from the Said Business School, and they're pitched at a level very similar to what you would get in an MBA program, but they are focused specifically for legal applications. So those courses have been designed for people with a law background to maximize the utility that they get out of them. You'll also start one of your law elective courses, and you can choose from a range of law courses that are at an advanced level but relevant to the content of the MLF program. Things like corporate finance, financial regulation, corporate insolvency, comparative corporate law, competition law. Those are standard LLM level courses, presuming that people have a prior background in law, but the content of which will complement the finance courses. You also, if you wish, can choose to do a second law elective if you take what's called the law track. So there are 2 tracks you can pursue on the MLF program. If you pursue the law track, you choose a second law elective from that list of complementary options, and that can begin in Michaelmas in the first term and carry on throughout the year. Alternatively, you might choose what's called the finance track. If you did this, you will then do a course on corporate valuation starting in the second term, and you'll choose a finance elective taken from a list that includes things like entrepreneurship, asset management, big data, mergers and acquisitions. There's quite a long list of courses which are relevant for the MLF program. And so that would be if you take the finance track. So just to be clear, if you do the law track, you do 2 law electives. If you do the finance track, you do 1 law elective and corporate valuation plus a finance elective. So those are the core finance courses and the electives. In addition, there's the core program course, Law and Economics of Corporate Transactions. So this starts in the second term and it carries on into the third term. Our second term is known as Hillary term, the third term is known as Trinity term. And what the Law and Economics of Corporate Transactions, or LECT course as it's known, does is it brings together the different components of the program as a whole. So the idea is not simply to introduce you to concepts from finance and to give you advanced concepts from law, but to see how these fit together in both an academic and a practical way. So the course starts in the second term because by that point you will already have had your introduction to economics from the First Principles of Financial Economics course in the first term, and you'll already be well into your understanding of finance. So in that second term, in the Law and Economics of Corporate Transactions course, what you'll do is you'll apply your understanding of economics to a series of examples of real corporate transactions. And these are done in the classroom context, a sort of lab session. We then proceed to a more practical implementation of this in the third term, in Trinity term, where what you will do is in groups, go through real life transactions that are taken from practice, which we've developed as case studies in conjunction with a group of practitioners, and you will apply the knowledge that you've learned to understand and analyze those real transactions. So your the course trajectory starts out with theory in the first term, and then becomes progressively more applied over the course of the year. So the Law and Economics of Corporate Transactions acts as the fulcrum of the program as a whole, bringing it together and showing you the application of the things that you are learning in other parts. So that gives you an overview of how the different pieces fit together. Where do students go after they've finished the MLF? What we've got here is a pie chart showing employment destinations for the past 3 years of data. So this gives a reasonable average of destinations. And what we see is that the most common destination is working in the legal sector, working as a lawyer. And fully a third of our graduates go to work as associate level lawyers in law firms, and another fifth, about just under 20%, go in as entry-level recruits, what are called training contracts in the UK. 13% of our graduates go to work in the finance sector, and then there are also significant groups of our alumni who go on to pursue further study. So there is a doctoral program in the law faculty, and we've had numerous MLF graduates go through that program, some of whom are now academic colleagues, in fact, in Oxford. And also a sizable minority of our students go to work in public policy, in government, in regulation. So we have alumni in most of the main financial regulators around the world. And another body of our alumni go into working in startups, to starting their own businesses. And exposure to entrepreneurship through the business school really opens people's eyes to the possibilities for entrepreneurship in the legal sector. It's a very exciting time now. There's a lot of change being driven by technology. And then about a fifth of the student body, we don't actually have data for where they've gone. The program serves as a jumping off point for a change in people's place of working. So we've got a very, very international student body. In a typical cohort of 45 students, we might have anything up to 30 different nationalities represented. And as a result of that, there is a lot of migration that follows people's graduation from the program. So what you can see in the bar chart that's displayed now is the blue shows where people came from before they took the MLF, and the orange shows where they went to in employment after they completed the MLF. And what we see here is really this very wide range of backgrounds that people are coming from in the blue chart. So from Europe, from North America, from Australasia, South America, the whole world is represented in the MLF cohort. What unites the MLF students is their passion for learning about finance and its application to law, and their academic credentials, because by being offered a place on the MLF program, you can be assured that you are someone who's shown outstanding academic achievement in your prior studies, because it's an intensely competitive process. We've had a very, very large number of applications that we had to sift through, and we're always excited to welcome the students because they are a particularly talented and interesting group of people. And that diversity of experience, diversity of background, makes the learning experience here more enriching and rewarding, because students are able to learn from each other as well as from the excellent colleagues who lead the courses. And then what we see in the bar chart is how actually a significant proportion of our alumni remain in the UK afterwards. So the UK is an important employment destination for our alumni. Not everybody does that, but a significant proportion do. So it is a springboard for migration in many cases. I feel that I've said enough by way of overview about the program, and I'm sure you'll have many questions. I'll be happy to answer those in a moment. Before I do that, I just want to remind you of a couple of key dates that you should be aware of. If you are wanting to accept your offer, then you'll need to do so, and you'll need to pay your deposit by the 1st of May. So that's next week. We are in the process, as I speak, of making our final decisions about financial aid, and these will be notified to you by the end of April, so before the deadline for paying the deposit. You'll also, if you've accepted, you'll also be notified about a web seminar that will be led by the head of finance careers at the SAI Business School, John Madgwick, which will be taking place in July. And that's to give you a heads up, if you're thinking about pursuing a career in finance, about the steps that you need to take to make sure that you're in a competitive position, because the finance recruitment round starts very quickly once you get to Oxford. So you need to be up to speed on that before you arrive. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to the two student colleagues who've joined us today, just to ask them to say a little bit about why they did the MLF, what their experiences have been to date, and what stood out for them, and what they're going to take away, and what skills they've developed. Natalia, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. Well, hi, I'm Natalia. I am from Brazil. I am a qualified lawyer since 2010, and prior to the MLF, I've been working as a project lawyer, advising both government and the private sector in infrastructure projects in Brazil. And my decision to come to the MLF, especially at this stage of my career, was because I believe that I could improve some of the quality of my work by understanding better how finance and the financial concepts were applied to the projects that I was advising in. And although I felt very comfortable in advising my clients in all legal matters and navigate the Brazilian jurisdiction and negotiate with the government, I still felt that the financial aspect is something that could be improved. And I searched for a lot of programs everywhere in the UK, in the US, in Europe, and I felt that the MLF was the exactly program that I wanted. It has the interdisciplinarity that I was searching for, so that was the main reason why I came. And to you, Youssef.
Sure, yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Youssef. So I'm also a current student doing the MLF. Firstly, just congratulations to everyone for getting an offer. So I'm French and English, and I did my undergraduate degree in philosophy, so nothing to do with either law or finance. I then went on to do a graduate degree in law in Paris, so in France. So I'm trained in French law. And so upon finishing, so I pursued 1 year, so it was a gap year during my graduate degree in France, and I worked in a couple of law firms as a kind of intern in Paris. And I think it was at that point that I realized that I really wanted to increase my knowledge in economics and finance, simply because nowadays most of a lawyer's work, and in particular transactions lawyer, will be around things like structuring deals, understanding how financial markets work, and I felt that really understanding not just the legal aspects, which is generally what you would learn in a kind of advanced legal course, but also the actual economics and even the mathematics underlying a lot of these kind of markets and the way they work is very important and really gives you a competitive edge. And effectively, as Natalia said, I also kind of looked around at the different programs in the UK and in Europe in general, and I really felt that the degree, the MLF at Oxford, really gives this very good balance between learning pure finance and economics, and also putting that into relation with the kind of legal aspects. So yeah, that was probably my main reason for applying.
Regarding to the reasons that we decided to, to the experience that we had, in my personal opinion, I believe that the MLF it's not a particular course that stands out. It's the whole thing. It builds up to a certain knowledge that you acquire through the process of doing it. I don't see one course as standing more than another. That's just a matter of personal interest. It's not really about the course. The good thing about the course is that it interconnects all the knowledges that you get from each subject, and at the end you see this well-rounded knowledge that you can actually relate and see how law and finance are really intertwined. But if I have to point it out, like one specific course, for me personally, was First Principles of Financial Economics, taught by Oren Sussman. It's a very abstract course. It's in the beginning of the MLF, and it kind of changed the way I look at the problems, the way I assess problems. Because as lawyers, we're trained to think in a certain way, into a certain logic, and we take the facts and we assess that and we process that through a certain logic and provide a solution at the end. But sometimes we are not that concerned with some of the economics and financial implications of it. We are just very concerned of the legal aspects. So that course made me rethink many of the deals I participated, even though many of the concepts I already stumble upon during my life and I already study, but the way it was presented, it changed a little bit how my critical thinking and how I assess problems in a way. So for me, that was what I really recommended.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree as well. I think that there are lots of courses here that are really good. I really did like the finance class as well. But I would also emphasize the kind of central importance of First Principles of Financial Economics, simply because, as Natalia said, it's the first class you do at Oxford that really covers economics, and in a sense it's a very good introduction to microeconomics, but further, it actually goes further than just being a simple introduction. It really opens up it gives you a different way of thinking about financial and economic problems. I think that as lawyers, we're often trained to think of financial markets and issues in economics from a very kind of legal perspective. So we often think about regulations and, different barriers and policies, but we often don't have the economic mindset, which is really what this course sets out to teach us. And the fact that the professor, Oren Sussman, so we actually are given chapters that are written by him, so that they're kind of chapters that are adapted to us who are non-economists, but they're also really good because they put you up to speed. And I personally felt that in a sense I was catching up on maybe a 3-year economics degree in one term, which is to say that it's a very intense course, but it's very rewarding. I think at first you feel like you don't understand anything, especially the first few weeks. You're really struggling with the material, and it really starts to be consolidated in your mind as you throughout the course, especially actually in the second term when you start picking up on finance as well. You start seeing how it all kind of interrelates, and you really start appreciating what you actually learnt in that course. So I would also go with that. Yeah.
Well, thank you both very much. That was really helpful insights. We're starting now to get some questions coming in. Please do use the Q&A panel or the chat panel to enter your questions to ask of me or the students. This is your chance actually to have those questions answered. We'll do our best to go through all of them in the order that they come in. So we have a question from Pavel saying he read last year's graduate handbook and mentioned that it's possible to take law electives outside the MLF menu. I confirm it will be possible to do that next year, and it is usually allowed if requested. So the MLF menu is chosen simply because those are the courses that we think complement most naturally the other parts of the MLF program, and we commit to ensure that there are no timetable clashes between the components of the MLF menu and the compulsory parts of the course. So one issue, if you take courses outside the MLF menu, is that there is a possibility that there might be timetabling clashes. In practice, we've been able to overcome these in most cases in the past, and I know that people have taken commercial remedies, which is the course that you mentioned, in the past. So I hope that answers your question. Then we have a question from Ahmed asking whether there are events where MLF students can get the platform to meet with leading law firms, development financial institutions, investment banks and private equity firms. Well, there are a series of different ways in which we're able to put you in touch with organizations of this type. So we run a series of careers-related events. We have a dedicated MLF careers liaison officer who helps scheduling these events. Some are organised for MLF students specifically. They tend to focus on law firms, and so law firms will organise sessions specifically for MLF students. But we also have some sessions from other types of institutions. The other channel is through the SBS Careers Service, who are organising a very, very frequent sessions where employers are coming to Oxford to talk to students, employers from the financial sector, development institutions and the like. But it might be worth my asking the students if they could just say a little bit about their experience of access to employers through these channels while you've been here.
So in addition to everything Professor John Armour just said, I'm going to do a bit of shameless self-promotion here, but so I'm currently the treasurer of the Oxford FinTech and Legal Tech Society, which actually has a lot of MLF students. In fact, historically it was founded by MLF students, and so this society invites a lot of practitioners and indeed even professionals outside of the legal sphere, whether they're founders of startups or in the finance world. And besides this particular society, there are other societies. You have the Finance Society at Oxford. You also have SBS societies, and you can join these different societies, and often they will invite practitioners, and especially if depending on the size of the event, you can really end up doing a kind of networking cocktail with these professionals that's quite small in size, and so really allows you to talk to them and figure out what you want to be doing and how you apply to their companies and what it's like to be doing their job. So that's an additional kind of channel where you get exposure to the professional world.
I agree. I think the law society is also they organize a lot of events with law firms that you can participate, and you can talk to the recruitment team and understand a little bit more about the process, and it's very helpful.
Thank you. So another question asking, apart from the workbook, what other preparation would you recommend in retrospect as MLF students? So I think that question is very much directed at you two. Knowing what you know now, what would you recommend people do to prepare themselves?
I don't think there's any preparation for what you're going to be experiencing here. It's very intense. But yes, study the workbook, prepare especially for the mathematics of it, because if you have to catch up together alongside with doing the work, it's going to be a little bit harder. So if you have the time, go through the workbook, try to understand the concepts that are there. And if you have a chance to study a little bit of economics, I think for me was something that I felt the need to go a little bit further during my studies, and if I'd have done that before, it probably would helped.
Yeah, I feel like the MLF really does prepare you even. So obviously you have the workbook. I think for us, we also had access to the MFE workbook. I don't know if that's still the case, but in any case, you have access to a plethora of different textbooks. Obviously, the main one you should be working on is the MLF one, which is, in my opinion, it actually contains all of the information you'll need for the degree. You don't really need to go into further mathematics beyond that unless it's your personal interest. And And I kind of just want to say this because this was something I was also worrying about last year, is that even if you have a hard time on your own with the workbook, there are pre-sessional classes that are given. I think that's still the case. And those really help you to basically go through the material together. So
just one thing I would like to compliment that it helped me a lot was doing the preparation for the finance lab, doing the Wall Street prep during I think we have to do that a couple of months before we come here. So if you're applying, we both attended the finance lab, and the preparations in the Wall Street prep were very helpful for the finance course and for the CARP evaluation if you decided to do the finance stream.
So on that, actually, we've got a couple of questions about labs and about the finance lab in particular. The questioners want to know how does the MLF relate to the finance lab? Do any of the sessions collide? So MLF students have the option to take the finance lab, which is essentially an extra course that runs outside of the examinable material. But it's a very, very useful set of sessions if you're thinking of pursuing a career in finance. It goes through a series of practical case studies that are designed to help you in either doing further finance study or in preparing for finance interviews. I don't know if you would like to say. I think you both did the finance lab, so perhaps you could say a little bit about your experience.
Definitely. So just to bounce on what Natalia said previously, definitely the preparation that you will need to go through in order to attend the finance lab is extremely useful. I would actually encourage everyone in the MLF, if they have the time, to follow the Wall Street prep classes like the Excel crash course, which is very useful. And exactly. Accounting is also was a very good class, especially if you've never done it before. So the finance lab was mostly ran over the first term. How it works is that they're basically in the kind of evenings. They start at around 5 p.m. and they finish at around 9 p.m. It might change this year, but that was how it was this year. And essentially how it works is you have very concrete cases to work on, which are pure finance. So it's things like structuring a loan for a particular M&A deal. It's very varied, so you have all different aspects of deals, and you work in a kind of team. And I'd say that there are two things I'd say very quickly on the finance lab. Firstly, I felt that as an MLF student who hadn't really studied finance before, the first couple of sessions were quite difficult to follow because you are basically with MBA and MFE students, so MBA and the Master in Financial Economics students, who presumably have a lot more experience than you will in these domains. And so at first you'll be learning a lot from your team, from the students who are with you. So it's a good experience, but you mustn't be discouraged if you're not answering all the questions that are being asked at first. And the second thing I'd say is that it's a very good venue for networking because there are very prestigious firms, finance firms, banks, and all of these professionals who come, and not only do they give the case and not only do they explain how they actually approached this case in real life, because they're real life cases, but you also get a kind of networking session with them after where you can ask a lot of questions. So that's quite helpful. So
I think that's it.
Okay, and that is the primary lab that's open to MLF students, and our expectation is that will be the lab that's open again next year. Somebody asked about a consulting lab. There is no offering of a consulting lab for MF students, at least at the moment. Another question from Maria, who is a legal advisor with the business strategy division of a banking institution. And Maria asks whether the MLF might be a better option for someone who has a professional background in law, who aspires to remain on the legal professional path as opposed to an MBA. So what I would say, and I'll ask the students to give their views as well, but what I would say is that the MLF is designed to allow somebody to pursue the intersection between law and finance. So if you want to remain on in the legal profession, then that's a plus for the MLF, because in addition to doing the finance content, which is content that also features in an MBA, you'll also have the opportunity to do advanced legal content, and also to see how finance and economics can be applied specifically to legal transactions. So neither of those features is available in an MBA. Moreover, the economics and finance courses that are offered as part of the MLF are not straight MBA courses. They're the same level as MBA courses, but they are oriented specifically towards law and legal applications, and that's most clearly the case with the economics course, First Principles of Financial Economics, which is really quite a unique course of a kind that you won't find anywhere else in any other program, which has been designed specifically for lawyers, and does cover a vast amount of material in a very elegant and thoughtful way. On the other hand, in an MBA, what you would get that you would not get in the MLF is options in things like marketing and strategy, and more on accounting. So if marketing and strategy and things around management, those are things that you want to learn about, then an MBA would be a better choice for you. But if you're more interested in the application of finance and its intersection with legal transactions, then the MLF is better for you. That said, I think that either choice would be a good one, and I don't think that you would harm your career prospects by pursuing either. So I think if you have the choice to do one or the other, then you're in a very fortunate position. I don't know if either of you two would like to add to that.
Well, I agree with the professor. I think those are different courses, different approaches. Any one of them will result in a very good outcome. In my personal opinion, I think the MLF is a little bit tougher than the MBAs because you have a more concentrated into the finance and into the law. So the courses are more dense and also diversify, as including like marketing, consultancy, or other subjects. So if you, at least in my opinion, if you decided to stay in the legal career, I would advise you to do the MLF. It's a very unique course, will give you what you're searching for in an MBA and even more. So.
Great, thank you, Natalia. So a couple of questions around careers, placements for current MLF candidates. We don't keep comprehensive data in real time about people's careers placements because we're not tracking what careers or what employment activity people are pursuing as they're doing it. But we have data from previous cohorts. My sense is that a number of current students who I've spoken to have secured employment in financial institutions as well as students who've pursued who've got jobs in the legal sector, very much in line with the data that I presented about previous cohorts. But let me put that question also to our current students, and perhaps if you could share your own personal experiences and what you know about other students in your cohort.
Yeah, sure. So I'd say that just kind of very similar to what the data shows, from what I'm aware, effectively there are students who are kind of more pursuing the consultancy route. I know that a few of them had interviews with consulting firms like McKinsey and BCG. So that shows that they get through to those stages. There are also, I feel, quite a few students who already practiced law before and therefore are looking to kind of be hired in law firms at an associate level. And I mean, I can talk for myself. So I was trained, I was trained in French law, but I decided that I actually wanted to become a solicitor in the UK. And so for whoever's wondering, I know I was wondering about this when I was in your position. Whoever's wondering, is it possible, for example, to get a training contract in the UK, in London, after this course, it is, and that's basically where I'm at. So I have a training contract now with one of the bigger law firms in London, and so that's the route I'll be pursuing.
I think it's very diversifying the cohort, what people wants to do and what they want to follow after the MLF. Some of them want to go into finance, some of them want to switch careers, and a lot of them want to stay in the law. A few of them are starting their careers, a few of them are already in some middle situation, so they are trying to stay as an associate or search for another position. I think it's very diversifying, and it opens up doors to a variety of opportunities. Myself, I intend to stay working as a lawyer. Probably I'm going to try to find a position in the UK to practice here for a while and go back to Brazil in a couple of years and continue my career there.
Thank you. And can you say a little bit about how you've been able to leverage the careers opportunities provided either within the law faculty or in the SAI Business School?
Well, for me, I participated in some of the events that the university offers, the law faculty offers, and I contact many of the HR teams, so they're very open because the cohort is so small, so they come to meet us, and you have a very good entry. You can email them and you can talk about what you're looking for and your opportunities, so you have a very straightforward way to talk to law firms and look for the ones that are more fit to what you are searching for. So at least for me, I found the law faculty very helpful in this aspect.
Yeah, I would also add that the SAID Business School is a huge resource as well. So the huge advantage with doing the MLF is that you have access to the general university careers services. You have access to all of the different law faculty events, which, as Natalia said, are very useful, especially when you're applying, because when you're at that interview, you can say, I met this person and we talked about this, and it's a huge competitive advantage. But you also have access to the SAID Business School Career Service, which is a separate service from the university, and it's, in my opinion, it's one of the best kind of career services I've had, based on my experience in different universities, simply because they have a lot of slots. You can sign up for a one-on-one session with HR consultants who were previously in the kind of roles that you're looking at. So I know that I had one-on-one session with a person who was previously working for 10 years with Morgan Stanley in the fixed income department. So it's very insightful, and they really help you to kind of guide your choices, and they give you a lot of strategic advice as well. And on top of that, I might add, there are mock interviews, and those are very useful, and they're adapted. So they have mock training contract interviews. So I did one of those before doing the real interviews, and those are very useful. You have consulting interviews and cases. I think there's even a very specific one for Amazon. So it's very, there's a broad variety of, there's a lot of support basically for people who want to do all kinds of different careers, and it's very helpful. Yeah.
And then another question, which I think is entirely to be expected, actually, given what's going on in the world, is how is Brexit affecting job opportunities in the UK? Now, I'll say my thoughts about this, and then perhaps the students can also relay their experiences. But Brexit has created a great deal of uncertainty in the short run, and uncertainty is problematic for business planning. So what that's meant is that a lot of businesses have deferred decisions about what they want to do with a lot of things, strategic decisions and also recruitment decisions, until that uncertainty is resolved. Most of that deferral was on the assumption that the uncertainty would now be resolved. So it was expected that the UK would have left the European Union by the end of March, and that we would know by now what sort of relationship we will be working towards in the future. The uncertainty has now been postponed until at least the end of October. And so what I think is likely to happen is that many employers are going to say, well, we can't postpone our decision making forever, and so some decisions are going to get made. So I think there's been a particular freeze on or restriction on hiring this year, but I think that we are likely to see that opening up as firms are forced to think about making decisions, realizing that they can't defer things indefinitely as the process stretches out for an even longer period. So that's what I would call the short run dynamics. And then there are the longer run dynamics. And so how Brexit will affect employment in the medium to longer run will very much depend on the nature of the UK's continuing relationship with the EU. And so what we might expect is that if the continuing relationship is a closer one, then we would see less of a change. But if the continuing relationship were a more distant one, for example, a so-called hard Brexit, then what we might see is an impact on business relations within the EU, but also potentially more opportunities outside the EU. That said, I don't think that medium to longer run dynamic is likely to be in place in the coming year. So for students who are arriving this autumn, I think it's very much going to be the short run dynamic. And so I don't think that the employment conditions next year can be any tighter than they have been this year, because this year was supposed to be the fulcrum period. And this year, my impression is that our students have still generally been successful in the employment market, and I'll just add an additional perspective on that, which is that although Brexit has undeniably had an impact in the marketplace in the aggregate, the MLF students are particularly employable within that marketplace, and so it's a dynamic that will affect whatever the dynamic is. It will affect MLF students less than it would affect students who are in the marketplace who are less well qualified. So that's all a rather circuitous way of saying that things are uncertain. But I hope it gives you some insights into how those uncertainties may play out and the possible paths going forwards. I don't know if you'd like to share some of your own experiences and the extent to which you feel Brexit's been affecting things.
Well, I agree with the professor. I think the moment right now it's tighter. It's tend to get better in the future, especially for the people who are coming next year. This year actually, next term. I for me specifically, I felt that it has some difficulties. I'm Brazilian and I'm also Italian. I have dual nationality, so I'm here as an European citizen. And by applying, you still feel that there are some concerns of how the situation is going to be and how my staying here it's going to be secured, or even some confusions. But I don't feel that that's a problem at all. Like there's still a lot of job opportunities, people contacting us and interviews. So I still believe that despite of all the uncertainty, there's still a market for lawyers and for people who come from the MLF.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just quickly add, I definitely feel that regardless of the different difficulties that may arise specifically because of Brexit, just to bounce off what you were saying, I think that the MLF students, we're really given tools which give us a very big competitive advantage over other applicants for a similar role. So specifically in the legal sector, I feel that in the UK, if you're looking to get employed here, commercial awareness is a very big thing for law firms. And I would say that the MLF really teaches you this specific skill. I remember in a few interviews, you'd be given cases, business cases, and you're lumped together with other law students who have never really studied accounting or finance or economics, and therefore when they see certain things in a deal, for example, how are you valuing this deal? What is EBITDA? And you, coming from the MLF background, you know what this is. And therefore, when you're then presenting cases in front of lawyers, you are speaking their language, but you are also speaking a business language which they are very much aware of. And that's, I would say, I really felt it. It was a very big competitive advantage. So
one other thing just to add on in terms of disruption and the employment market. So we talk about Brexit as a disruptive force in business, in finance, and in law. Another major disruptive force that is starting to play out is technology. Brexit is disruptive particularly for the UK, but technology is going to be disruptive everywhere. We're seeing major advances in AI and its penetration into the legal sector. As Youssef mentioned, we have a smart law and fintech society, which is amongst which the MLF students are very active and very much engaged in thinking about some of these issues. And we're also hoping that next year we'll be able to offer a law elective in law and technology, which we're developing jointly with the computer science department, and which will allow students to engage again in more detail with some of these interesting opportunities that technology is providing. So I just want to pick out a couple more questions quite quickly. So somebody's asked about deferral. So what I would say with deferral, there isn't a generic answer. It depends on the individual circumstances. And so if you want to raise a question about deferral, please refer that to the MLF office. Contact them by email, and they will get back to you as quickly as they can with an answer in relation to your particular circumstances. Another question from Shirai is, how can you explain how the college system interacts with the MLF program? Does it influence course placement, assignment of tutors, etc.? Well, the college system is a very important part of Oxford University. It's more important, the colleges are more important for undergraduates than they are for graduate students. So for an undergraduate student, they are admitted to the college, and then the college is their primary home within their undergraduate career here. For graduate students, you are admitted to the faculty, and the faculty is your primary home. So the focus of your teaching, the focus of your interaction with other students will be with the MLF program, which will be delivered in the law faculty and in some cases in the Said Business School. So those two faculties, which are the partner institutions for the MLF program, that will be the focus of your studies while you're here in Oxford. You will be affiliated with a college. There are a range of colleges that accept MLF students, but your college interactions will not be ones that will involve any teaching or any course placement. So all your teaching, all your course interactions will take place in the faculties, the law faculty and the business school. So what will the college interaction involve? College interaction will be a source in some cases of accommodation, not universally, but some colleges offer students accommodation, and will also be a source of social interaction. So as a member of a college, as a graduate student, you'll be a member of what's called the Middle Common Room, or MCR. And this is a space where students across all graduate programs are able to meet and interact socially. So there'll be parties, social occasions. There are also sporting events, cultural events, and other kinds of interaction that occur and are organised by the MCRs in college. And what that gives you is the opportunity to meet clever people, interesting people from a wide variety of different academic backgrounds. So the cohort on your course are very diverse in terms of their nationalities, but they're all people who are doing law and finance. In the Middle Common Room in your college, you'll find people who are doing geography, who are doing computer science, who are doing medicine, a whole range of academic disciplines, and that provides an additional source of enrichment and interaction during your time here in Oxford. I don't know if Natalia and Youssef, you'd like to add anything about your experiences of the college system while you've been here.
Well, I'm a member of the Hereford College. For me, it's been great. The MCR organize a lot of social activities. Like the professor said, it's more about the network you can build there with people outside of the legal field than actual classes or thought courses. But my college has been very helpful through all things that I have to figure it out while I moved to the UK and all the process. They've been helping me a lot, and I think that's it.
Yeah, So I'm part of St. Hugh's College. I think your college experience depends on two things, which is firstly the college you're in, obviously. So some colleges are much bigger, some are much smaller. And secondly, basically what you make of it. I feel like some students spend a lot of their time at the business school and maybe miss out a bit on the college experience, whereas others, I think I count myself in this category, really try and make friends within the college. As Professor John Armour just said, it's a really good opportunity to meet students who are studying a lot of different disciplines. My college is quite big, so I get accommodation on the grounds. Sometimes colleges have off-ground accommodation as well. And being on the grounds is very nice. I mean, I have access to lunch in hall. It's very easy to meet up with other members of the college. And colleges are just aesthetically pleasing as well. They're quite nice to kind of walk around. So, yeah.
So somebody's asked quickly, just as a follow-on from this, how do you join a college? Well, you are allocated a college at the over the course of the next few months. So if you're offered a place on the MLF, we guarantee you a college place, but we can't say which college it will be at the point of acceptance. But we will work with the colleges who accept MLF students. It's about half the colleges. There's a list on the MLF webpage saying which colleges do accept MLF students, and we work with them to allocate the students over the course of the coming months. So a couple more questions. Domenico from Italy asks how whether the law units taught in the course have an EU focus, an international one, or a UK one. Well, it varies from course to course, and you can obviously find out more about the courses. There's a series of introductory lectures at the beginning of the year that give students a taster for what's involved, and there are also online materials setting out what's in the syllabus. But what we're increasingly doing is trying to see the courses, the law electives, as offering students a set of principles, so a set of core principles, which are offered in a theoretical way, and then these are substantiated by reference to case studies from particular jurisdictions. And so the typical jurisdictions that we would look at are obviously the UK, because that's where we are, that's where we're based, and we have expertise primarily in that. But also we look at solutions in the EU, and in many cases, at least until very recently, the EU and UK solutions have been the same, but where they diverge, we emphasize that. And we also look at solutions from the US. So to take the course in comparative corporate law, or the course in financial regulation, both of these follow this format where we look at principles, and then we look at how they play out in the US, in the EU, and the UK. That said, though, this does vary from course to course, and so some courses might emphasize the UK more. Then we have courses which are particularly focusing on the EU, where we have a course on European business regulation, for example, which is exclusively EU law. And so the way to identify which courses focus on which aspects is to look at the course materials and look at the introductory lectures that you can see online when you're registered, or you can see at the beginning of the year. Then we have a question about the relationship between the business school and the law faculty. So how does a student shuffle between the two during the term? Well, most of the teaching for the MLF takes place in the law faculty. So the course is administered in the law faculty. Most of the teaching takes place there. So the only components that will be delivered in the business school are the pre-sessional courses. So pre-sessional course in maths takes place in the business school. And if you do the finance stream, the corporate valuation course and the finance elective will be taught in the business school. If you do the finance lab, that will also take place in the business school. But everything else, all the core courses and the law electives, are delivered in the law faculty. So for the core courses in finance and economics, the students don't shuffle between the two sites, the faculty do. So the business school faculty come over to the law faculty to deliver those core courses. Then Maria asks, if a college doesn't have accommodation, what are the other accommodation options and how do they work? So there's a thriving private sector for accommodation for students, and there are various channels through which students can pursue this. So there are agencies that specialize in student lets, and I think there are also platforms that offer information about accommodation. I don't know if either of you two would like to shed light on this.
Yes, there's also the university graduate accommodation office. It's not related to the college, but to the university. They have some properties all over the town, and they also offer to families. I came with my family, so college only offers single accommodation for students in my case, but the university did offer accommodation for families. So I live in a university property. So I think that's also another alternative. They're very good, very organized, and some of the locations are very close to the law faculty and to the Said Business School. So,
can I just say, if you do, you should just as a strategic thing, you should probably apply to the university accommodation quite early.
Yes.
Because they have a big waiting list. I remember that I actually applied. In the end, I got college accommodation, so I could just drop my place with university accommodation, but it's always a good kind of backup plan.
I applied quite late, and I was really concerned I couldn't get it. I was really in the waiting list, like 600 in the waiting list, and I got it, and they offered me 2 accommodations. So even if you feel like, oh, I already missed the time, you still should apply. You might get it.
Thank you. So we have one more question. Maria asks, what would you recommend regarding the subjects related to economics for people with more experience in the legal sector than in economics? Well, people who have more experience in the legal sector than in economics, that would describe the typical MLF offeree. So the course is designed for people like you, and the economics and finance courses are designed to be accessible to people who do not have prior experience. They do not make any assumptions about prior background. There are some limited quantitative assumptions, so you will need to work through the maths workbook, and it's very important that you do that over the course of the summer. That workbook was designed for the MLF program, so we designed that with the assistance of I think our first cohort, and the person who designed that also now helps to deliver the maths pre-sessional class. So you'll find that, I think, a very useful resource in getting up to speed with the quantitative prerequisites. They're not demanding in an objective sense, so this is not university level maths. But if you haven't studied maths for a long time, it may take you a while to reacquaint yourself with a quantitative way of thinking. So the sooner you get to grips with that in the workbook, the better. Then once you're here, the thing to be aware of is that the finance and economics content will come at you very quickly in the first term. That's the way the program's designed. It's front-loaded so that you can engage with that content as early as possible, because later in the year you will then be applying it. So you should be prepared for the fact that if you don't have a background in this, that first term will seem quite disorienting, because you'll be getting a lot of information in a short space of time, and you'll be working very, very hard to assimilate it. What I would say is that is, if you feel that way, if you don't have a prior background in economics, that's sort of how many students do feel, because you are learning a lot. You are gaining momentum in your understanding from a standing start. And then what you will find is, as the year progresses, you get the opportunity to consolidate your understanding by applying it through the practical exercises in the Law and Economics of Corporate Transactions course. First in the lab setting in the Hillary term, in the second term, and then in the context of real transactions in the summer term, in Trinity term. And so you get basically 3 passes over that material, and each time you will become better in understanding it. So my advice, other than to make sure that you work through the workbook, is just follow the program and don't panic when you get here. I don't know if you have any additional comments or thoughts about that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just, you just got to work. I mean,
we cannot lie. It's a demanding program.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to work yourself But it's nothing. If you got an offer, I'm certainly sure that you're capable of following. You just have to put a bit of an effort and keep going to the lectures and revisiting the concepts, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, I would say that probably one of the main challenges you'll face, especially in that first term, is that you are, so as was said, you are facing probably very different material, but also you're juggling that with the fact that a lot of you will probably be applying to jobs. And that can be quite challenging, because applying to jobs, as everyone knows, is quite time consuming. And especially for the finance jobs, you have to be applying quite early. So yeah, that was probably my main challenge, and it was, I think, the challenge of a lot of people in the program, but ultimately works out well generally. So
yeah, and even if you decided to do the finance stream, which requires a little bit of mathematics, and I think we both did the finance stream, and it is also something that you can do it. It's not that conceptually challenging. It's just a little bit of effort.
Great. Well, thank you for your questions. It's been a pleasure to interact with you this afternoon. I think we've had a chance to answer all the questions. If we've missed anything, we'll follow up by email. And obviously, if you have further questions, things have occurred to you that you didn't get the chance to ask today, then please do send those in to the MLF office, and we'll get back to you. So I'd like to thank Natalia and Youssef for the very helpful input that they provided today, and I look forward to welcoming as many of you as possible to Oxford this autumn. Thank you.